Welcome to the Voice of Thai podcast, a space for stories, insights, and conversations that uplift the profession of teaching and inspire positive change in international schools. For over 40 years, the International Educator has served this community through recruitment resources and a dedication to amplifying the voices of international educators around the world. Hello, my name is Stacy Stevens and I'm the director of the International Educator. In this week's episode, we'll be speaking with Ginny Prairie, who is the Director of Teaching and Learning at the International School of Kenya. PTC and Thai and several partners many years ago created the standards for practice for international schools. Ginny's school has recently adopted these standards. We're going to spend a little bit of time speaking with her about the decision that they made, why they made it, and what they're hoping that having standards for their school does for their students and the impact on learning. All right, Ginny, I'd like to welcome you to the International Educator podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Stacy.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your role and what school you're at. Let's get a little bit of background on you before we get started.
Okay, that sounds good. So currently I'm at the International School of Kenya, which I think is one of the best schools in the world and getting better every day. And I am the Director of Teaching and Learning.
And how long have you been at the school, Ginny?
This is my third year in Kenya at this school and in this role. Before that, I was in Japan at the American School in Japan. I was in Seoul, Korea at Yongsan International School of Seoul. I was in Saudi Arabia with International Schools Group, and I was in Beirut at the American Community School of Beirut. This is, I think, my 24th year overseas.
Oh, wow. That's like you've been in really 3 different regions then, so across the world.
Yeah, and each one has just been so amazing and so different. And I feel that that I've just learned a lot about so many cultures and so many people. I just feel really grateful to have had this experience.
Well, we're really excited to learn a little bit from you. You know, one of the things that's really important to us at the International Educator is advocating for schools to think about using standards in their hiring, in their growth and appraisal process, and using standards in their school. And you're a school that we've become aware of that has adopted the international standards of practice that were created by the Principals Training Center, the International Educator, with a few other partners in developing these multiple sets of standards. So we really want to learn from you a little bit about when we take back and we think about just standards, regardless of whether we're talking about the international standards of practice, which is a specific set, why did you feel like at ISK having standards would be really valuable for you and your work at the school?
Yeah, it's been a process. And so something that we really started looking at was, we had this vision, we had this mission. We redesigned what we call our educational aims, which is our definition of learning, and what we call the Big Five, which are our active learner roles, being a self-manager and a collaborator and a change maker. And we had all of these. And we had a code of ethics and we have our contracts. And it just felt like we had all of these threads that didn't come together. And so we needed something that would bring everything together. So we kept coming back to research, and we know that quality teaching is the single most important factor that impacts student learning. So if we want better learning, we really need to be clear about what great teaching looks like, and then build the systems that help make sure that we grow toward that vision, right? And that's where the standards came in. And it has been really helpful. We're still in our beginning stages, but we all know that the idea of teaching standards is nothing new. We probably came from schools with either either the Danielson model or even just bespoke ones, right? But everybody's kind of had standards somewhere. And ISK at the time really didn't have standards to go by. So we really felt like we needed a strong set of standards. And so that's where the Thai PTC standards came in. Um, and something that we also really thought about was how do we bring the standards in and we actually use them, right? This is something that is part of who we are. They're not just checklists or shelved, as some lofty idea or something, but they're drivers. So we needed to embed them in everything we do. So we think about how do we use them in our hiring, how we coach teachers, how we evaluate, how we design professional learning. And when you have all of that alignment, then you start to see the progress. I think also hard conversations are so much easier because now we're grounded in like the same language, right? We have a third point that's a shared objective, and it takes away that need to be defensive. And I think it creates opportunities to name a behavior and discuss solutions for improvement. And when you have that, then I don't know. I think teachers feel supported because they can see their growth, they can track their growth, they can have transparent conversations about it. And then our students, of course, benefit because they're being taught by educators who are reflective and intentional and just always growing. So for us, it wasn't about just how do we, adding one more initiative that everybody needs to do, but it's really about what is the one thing that just ties everything together. And that was our hope for the standards.
That's the shift that we are seeing at Thai because we've had these conversations with some other people in different schools, and the shift that you're really illuminating is what we're seeing and that what we're advocating with the international standards of practice is I think sometimes growth and evaluation or growth and appraisal has been this add-on at the end with a different set of language, like using those standards over there, whether they're Danielson or Strong, they've been another process and another system that wasn't necessarily tied into the whole picture of teaching and learning. And that's the shift that like it sounds like your school is making is like, how do you take those things that define great teaching? And because instruction and impact on student learning, that's our core business. How do we make that aspect of our core business more central? And it's not that you couldn't do it with these other outside standards. It's just that it hadn't been done yet. And I
Right.
think the PTC standards, the PTC Thai standards, I think the international standards of practice, one of the things that I think deeply resonates with people about them is they really are through the lens of international schools. So talk a little bit about why in your process of wanting standards to be central and at the core of the business of the school, why did
Mhm.
you choose the international standards of practice?
Yes, and I first want to go back to something you said too. I also think, I mean, I've just announced that I have been overseas for 24 years, and in that time, you know, um, there's that pendulum swing in education, right? In everything that we do, right? There's this pendulum swing of, growth and evaluation. We're way over on the right. And so, and they belong together and and then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, we need to separate. Growth and evaluation should be different. Teachers should get to grow without feeling like they're being assessed on it, you
Right.
know? And I think now we're kind of back to, okay, how can you have a system just like we do for kids? We have to have evidence of learning and evidence of growth. And so we do kind of have to put them together again. And so it's that pendulum swing that I think we're trying to find the balance of. But you talked about James Strong, and how can you not trust the research and the work of James Strong and the other organizations that have come together to create these standards, right? Why wouldn't we trust them? We've been through Danielson, we've created our own, but at the end of the day, we wanted something that was research based. Other schools like us, are hopefully using them as well. And that gives us alignment and maybe some common language when we think about current teacher practices and things we're looking for as we move forward in our strategic framework and who we recruit and also who we might need to move on, right? And so these really helped us feel like we're doing work with other people. And it's not just, oh no, this is only ISK. It is bespoke
Right.
to us. It's not like anyone else. No, we needed something that we could have conversations then with other schools.
I just think as well, like to kind of plug into something that you were saying, is I feel like we've done all of this work, and then how have we allowed the teachers to tap into it and connect to it? And it's that idea of core language, like of goal setting, of knowing clearly what the goals and the expectations are for teaching and learning at your school. And when you can take that core language and use it through hiring, through goal setting, through growth conversations, like it really just becomes so integral. And to your point, like the international standards of practice were done with a really strong group of collaborators, James Strong being, one of them who really helped with setting this system of standards. So tell me a
Right.
little bit about what it's been like to use them. What are some of the ways that you're using them? What are some of the ways that you are thinking about leveraging them because you're kind of new in your journey with this set of standards?
We are very new, and you know what? We're going slow. In Kiswahili, we'd say pole pole, right? Slowly, slowly, because we want to do this right and we want to do this well. So we are at the very beginning of this journey. We rolled the standards out with all the teachers at the beginning of this school year as a self-assessment tool to guide their professional learning journey. And then we encourage them to use the standard that they felt that they could make improvement um, in as a starting point for their goal for the year. And then not only did they need to consider the standard for improvement, but how might that goal also align with one of our strategic focus areas? And then throughout the year, the teacher would reflect on how they were working toward their goal and share that with their supervisor. I think we do 2 reflections throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, we have a big celebration of our learning by sharing our goals and our learning and our growth as a school. And, we encourage teachers to do these in teams, right? I think you learn better when you're working in a collaborative team. And so that was something that we definitely encourage with our teachers. So they would do the self-assessment individually, but then they might find a goal that they want to work on as a team, and they could even be using different standards that they're really trying to improve upon, but still have the same strategic focus goal as a team. Um, and I'm confident that next year's structure will improve as the leadership reflects on the process and the outcome. But I want to share too about something that we've been working on, and that's really thinking about what does professionalism look like at ISK. And that was something that in the standards we felt like we could maybe add a standard, and we're still trying to figure out what that looks like. But when we think about professionalism, we're really thinking about, ethical conduct and accountability, adhering to policies, communicating respectfully, things like that. Those were parts of the international standards that we felt like we weren't we weren't able to see in those standards, and we needed to add something to it. Um, and so that's something that has been kind of new, and we're trying to figure that part out. And we're in the messy bits right now, but I think that in the long run, that one's going to help us.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think that's when I've done this work with sets of standards, whether it's with Marzano or Danielson, sometimes there is that like that professionalism category that I think sometimes needs to be thought through a little bit more, beefed up a little bit more for your context.
Right.
and ways that you're trying to support people of what it means to be a professional in this environment. Tell me how the teachers are responding to this, because I know, we get initiative fatigue, in our schools. Is this being seen as another initiative? Like, what's been the impact on teachers and how have teachers felt about bringing in this new set of language and trying to kind of really connect it across the multiple systems in a school?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure that I have a great answer because we're so,
One.
still in that beginning stage, right? We're still in the shallow end. Um, and I don't think that impact is what we're looking for yet, but what we are looking for is how we as a leadership team can learn from this year's process and progress to improve our growth and evaluation system. We're also looking for examples, like real examples from teachers of how they've unpacked the standard and the evidence that they're showing towards proficiency or success of that standard. And we're hoping that that can help us create a bank of examples that
Right.
teachers can then use as a guide. And so I also think that this is a great opportunity for us to create a committee, a collaborative team in the school to take a look at how it went this year and then, and use that data to really think about what those improvements might look like next year. So it's not just coming from the leadership team, but it's actually coming from the teachers who are the ones who want to learn and grow.
With the work that you've done so far, because a lot of us have been in systems where it's like, well, it's this year and it's something different 2 to 3 years down the line. Are you feeling like ISK with the work you've done so far and the potential that you see in the standards? Do you feel like this is probably like a pretty long-term commitment or something you're just going to explore for a few years? Where is this fitting in, I think, that longevity question that we often have about things that we're doing in schools?
Mhm. I'm so proud of the work that has happened at ISK in the last few years. Next year is the final year of this strategic plan, and really that the feedback that we've received is no one wants to throw anything out and start over again. Everyone is really feeling good about the work that we're doing. I've never worked at a school where every teacher was on board and excited and ready for change and I don't know and vulnerable about themselves being able to change, and that's been really really neat. I've really enjoyed that. Um, so I think that we're in it for the long run. But what I do think is that even if we are in for the long run, we still are going to make sure that each year we're making it better and better, and that we're collecting feedback from our faculty to make sure that this is the right way forward, and that we continue with that, and that we add them to the conversation. How are again, it's that having committees, right, and adding teachers in um, to get their ideas and then how do we maybe even bring kids in? We make kids learn through standards, right? And
Yeah.
so, and we ask them about it. We get feedback about that. So why shouldn't we be getting feedback about how proficient we might be in our standards as teachers from our students?
Well, Jenny, thank you so much for taking the time. I can tell you as someone who's now spoken to several schools about this, you're in good company of schools that are really using the standards and trying to look at how are they more core language and how are they something that connects a lot of different systems and pieces that we manage in schools. So I really want to thank you for your time and sharing the ISK journey with our audience about your use of the standards.
Well, thank you. It was so nice to talk about our journey, and I hope you share with me some of these other schools so that maybe we can partner with them and we can all learn together.
All right. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Stacy.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and our newsletter so you don't miss out on all of the stories and resources from the international schools community. Check out the show notes for links and more information for this episode. You can also find us online at www.thaimonline.com and in all of your favorite social media places.